Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic. Oops. Okay, so welcome everyone to season 2, episode 9 of another riveting episode of our Zoom garden plot. We are talking about some wonderful things tonight. Let me see if I can just advance to the next slide. We've started talking about comfrey and ground nuts and all kinds of things, but on the main agenda is garden updates, or our garden updates from Bill and Mary's garden, from the Greenwood Lake Community Garden. Elena has sent in a picture of her garden, her movable garden. And then as usual, about midpoint through, we'll have a little break, a 1-minute break, and then we'll, if that's how the time goes, we'll finish up with some Q&A, and we do have quite a few questions tonight, and then we'll do some announcements. So maybe I'll just stop sharing here real quick and answer. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. Just answer Chad's question real quick. I did take a picture of my ground nuts. They're about 6 inches high right now, Chad, with some very thin runners coming out. I don't know if yours is doing anything more spectacular with a few leaves only.
Oh, no, that's
very slow
great.
growth.
No, it's going to take a while, but as long as they're coming up, that means it's begun.
And did you plant yours?
No, we hopefully in the next week or two, because well, when I go over my community garden, I'll explain.
Okay. All righty. So let me get back to the PowerPoint then. And I will just share my screen again. I have to get back in the habit of remembering to share my screen. Okay. So first up is Bill and Mary's garden. Bill sent some wonderful photos into Chad. So Bill, do you want to talk to us about what we're looking at here and what's going on? We sent 2 photographs.
This is like a week and a half old, but what you're looking at is lettuce on the left. There's some carrots after that are small. There's radishes that are almost done, and then there's beets. So anyway, there were 2 things I was going to deal with tonight. One of the things in the gardening Zoom in the invitation was the problem with time, weeding, watering, this and that and everything. So I was going to give a few ideas about that you can minimize.
Okay, let's go back to looking.
So basically it's very simple. When you weed, you mulch. No procrastinating, no nothing. You weed, you mulch. Otherwise, you'll weed again. Okay. So that's the first rule, which I don't follow, but I hope some of you do. And whenever I don't, I'm always sorry. And you should you should mulch everything, walkways and beds, because weeds grow everywhere. And for walkways, some of the things I use is paper or cardboard. 4 layers of newspaper, or just a layer of cardboard, and followed by wood chips. That's my most common walkway mulch. For beds, it varies. First of all, you have to wait for the plants to be big enough, or you have to have grass clippings to sort of slip it around them without harming them. So if you don't have grass clippings, you may have to wait a while before you mulch, because it's hard to put, leaves and other stuff right around a small plant. When I do the beds, I sometimes often do 2 layers of paper again over the entire bed. I do 2 or 3 inches of leaves, and then I follow that with straw, mostly to hold down the leaves. Okay. And because straw can blow, I also have scattered on the bed rocks to hold the straw down. And that's my way that I do most of the beds. there's other ways to do it too. Sometimes I use weed fabric. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's the stuff that's supposed to get rid of weeds. It's a terrible thing to use, not for my use, but to actually get rid of weeds on a permanent basis, which is what it's used for. Because what you do is you put that down, you put mulch over it, the mulch decays, the weed seeds fly in, and the next year the weeds grow and they put their roots through the weed fabric. And now the weed fabric is permanently attached to the soil, and you have to tear up the whole thing in order to weed it. So weed fabric is not a good thing to use, but if you take it up all the time, which I do in the fall, I find it useful for certain types of beds. So for example, I sometimes put it over leaves and paper. So that's a good thing to do. It holds it down. And the other thing about weed fabric, it allows water to go through. If you have liquid fertilizer, that goes right through. Air goes through. And it does prevent weeds from growing, at least for temporarily, not for a long term, but for temporarily. And I find it's useful when, for example, you pull a bed out and you don't want to have it bare for a while. You can do a temporary weed fabric mulch. So that's a good thing. And sometimes I use it just around warm weather crops because it does warm the soil more because it's dark usually. And so it does provide some more warmth. I also, this year, I've found I have raised beds and I have a tilted plot. So one edge of the bed is very steep. And if it gets heavy rain or something like that, it'll erode. So what I use is the weed fabric tacked along that side with those ground staples. And that heavy rains don't erode that side anymore. Now, if your garden is flat, it probably isn't as much of a problem, but my edges, the last couple of rains that we had, I had a lot of erosion. We had 3.5 inches about 2 weeks ago in an hour in my area here. And that led to a lot of erosion on my tilted sloped garden. So anyway, I find that to be useful as well. The other question I wanted to deal with tonight was just a question of what should you succession plant? We're to the point now where if you want to succession plant, you've got to think about it because we're into summer. And so here's some of the things why I succession plant and what I do. I plant another set of plants for plants that fail prematurely. So for example, my cucumbers always get diseased, and so they never last through the summer. They always die back early. So I started a second round of cucumbers, maybe even a third round, and I put them out over the summer. They come fairly quickly. And so if I put them out with light fabric over them, it keeps the bugs off of them till they get strong. Then I pull the fabric off and let them climb the fence. And I managed to get a second and third crop from the cucumbers. Zucchinis, I know everybody's tired of zucchinis, but probably not yet, but soon. I have squash borers, and most people do. And squash borers get into the stems and the plant goes. And so I usually start a second crop of zucchini right about now. And then I put it out in July sometimes, again, covered initially, and then take the cover off. And the advantage of this is that they'll produce fall, August, September, October, you'll get zucchinis. And the squash borers don't have a second round of eggs that they lay and a second round of them. So they don't bother the fall zucchini. So that's a good thing. I also plant things if I want a second crop or a multiple crop. So I mentioned before, I always plant lettuce every 2 weeks. I plant 20 lettuce plants. And I try to keep the lettuce going all summer and all year. But there's other things that you can do. For example, beans. Beans are good for a second crop. They're fairly fast. They like to heat in the summer. And so it depends how long your beans last, but they usually stop producing after 3 or 4 weeks, maybe less. And so you could put a second crop of beans in. And I also do a second crop of corn. planted right about now for September, late September harvest. I have a first crop in now that's about maybe 2 feet high, but I do a second crop. And then right now is the time to do fall crops. So anything you want to produce for the fall, like brassicas, chard, escarole, beets, carrots, spinach, you need to be thinking of planting them relatively soon, and maybe even providing shade netting over the heat of the summer for them. But they'll produce in September, October. So it depends. They're different. Escarole is relatively quick, and probably you could plant that in August. But if you don't get your brassicas started soon, they're not going to be ready by the time in the fall that they're supposed to be.
What about chard? About
Chard
Swiss
is
chard?
relatively quick too. So
I'm in a little bit of a warmer climate too, so I was going to delay it until August, aiming for October, November, because I'm a little bit warmer down here.
yeah, well, that could work. That could be fine. The thing to realize whenever you do fall crops is that the sunlight is waning starting now, right? There's less sunlight every day. And the days to maturity that you have on your crops, on the envelopes that tell you, 50 days or 70 days or something, that's totally wrong for crops planted in the fall. You need to add maybe 2 or 3 weeks to that time if you want to get the fall crops in time. Otherwise, they'll be getting ready, but then they'll get hit by a frost, and that's the end of it. So just remember to add those extra days to maturity. The other thing, of course, in summer, it's dry, it's hot, so you need to water quite a bit to make sure that the plants grow properly, quickly, and so forth. And then for me, but probably not for most people, I grow things starting in July and August for the winter crops to put in the greenhouse. So I do kale, collards, and chard with the specific idea of putting them into the greenhouse. They reach almost maturity. I put them into the cold greenhouse over the winter, and I harvest those for a couple months. And by then, the other small plants in the greenhouse, like spinach and lettuce and so forth, are starting to produce as well. So the winter garden goes all year long, and I mean all winter long. So anyway, that's mainly what I wanted to cover tonight. I had one other picture of the part of the garden.
Yes, I'll share my screen again, Bill. Thank you for that. Wow, that was super interesting, especially the part about the covering it with shade cloth because it's so hot right now.
Yeah,
You just said fence it. This was the
Yeah.
second one.
Bill, you have a lot of, you're very continuous, because like, I think most of us like do a planting, and then we have to like rest our brains for a little bit. You seem to be able to go continuously, thinking
Well,
on the next level.
I'm always behind. This is what it looks like in the summer. This is actually from last year, but actually my garden looks much the same year from year. So this is around July, beginning of July last year. The plants are in different places because I move them around, but basically you see about maybe 2/3 of the garden here. I can't get the whole thing from my deck, so it's just too big. But there's another bed on the left that you can't see, and there's beds in the forward area here that you can't see.
Fantastic. Wow.
Bill, if you're behind, I'm dead.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
I know, you're behind.
Yeah, I can't keep up at this time of the year. There's no way you can keep up. And, between the heat and then the watering takes a long time. Then you have the bugs attacking, and it's tough. I would hate to be an actual farmer and have to depend on my living by how well my garden or my farm is going to do, because it's a really tough thing, and it's getting tougher because of climate change. So
I feel the same way. If we had to depend on what we grow, we'd be sunk. Bill, what is that in the middle there to the left of the opening? It looks like a giant
okay, it's a zucchini
monster.
It's a zucchini that has just been attacked by the squash borer.
Oh.
So it's still producing zucchinis, but you can see it's on its last legs.
Yeah, yeah.
You can see it's starting to wilt.
Monster.
And in a few days, and even though they say you can slit the stem and you can remove the borer and you plant it back in with soil on it, never worked for me. So, so it's hard. The squash borers are tough.
Yeah, squash borers are heartbreaking.
You can use BT as well sometimes.
One thing you said, Bill, that was interesting about the landscape fabric. I left the landscape fabric down over the winter. And there was a picture last week or 2 weeks ago that I didn't remember why I put it in when I was talking about the keyhole garden.
Right.
But I was showing it, but then I forgot how the weeds had grown up like 1.5 feet. So they were at the same level of some of the pots I had on the side. And it was, I planted lemon verbena in a pot, but yet lemon verbena is everywhere. And it's 1.5 feet high this year. And it all came through the landscape fabric. I didn't realize I should have removed it. They probably
germinate on top, send the roots down, and then they're there.
Yeah.
And you have to tear it up.
Because pulling the fabric up, it's amazing how deeply the roots are.
They'll go as far as they can.
Yeah.
Bill, I have a question. What's the size of your garden plot?
Okay, I think it's about 55 by 75 total, somewhere in that range. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I have a question regarding the squash. So you said you're getting ready to plant your next round of squash for the fall now to try to avoid the evil borer, right?
Right.
But you're starting them indoors. You're not direct sowing. Is there a reason why?
I start almost everything indoors.
Okay.
I find the weather conditions outside are so erratic and so hostile to plant seeds growing that only in the spring, I think you can get away with putting them out. But right now, with the heat and everything, things dry out in less than a day. The seeds would probably dry out and not germinate. So I always start inside. I then put them outside to grow in the day and bring them in at night to keep. And then when they're big enough, I just put them out.
Do you have a trick for moving things like squash and cucumbers from when you're transplanting them? Because I know that they don't like their roots jostled a lot.
That's right.
So when you go to transplant it, do you have a trick that you use for that?
Well, I mean, my cups that I plant them in are fairly big, and you shouldn't let them get so big that they start coming out of the bottom of the thing.
Right.
If you do that, and you do it quickly, I do it usually in the evening, so they're not in the sun all day. I water them before I plant them, and then right after I plant them, I shade them for a day or two, and then I just keep track of them, make sure they're doing okay. I also put fertilizer in the hole when I plant them.
What do you use? Like a fish emulsion or something?
Sometimes a fish emulsion, but actually most of the time I do a combination of blood meal and bone meal. Just, like 1 or 2 teaspoons of each, put it in the thing, you shovel it in and mix it up and then just plant. And mulch too.
Mulch. That's what I'm taking away from there.
Wow, Bill, that was incredibly helpful. I made so many notes here and you answered so many of my questions. Thank you for that. That was very, very helpful.
Okay, I think that's all I had to say, unless there's other questions. I can answer questions forever, but probably you want to do something else.
Well, does anybody else have questions for Bill, or shall we motor on?
Thank you for your time. You're amazing. And I appreciate just seeing your setup and hearing you talk.
Agreed. Thanks, Bill.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. We're going to go to the next slide. All right, Chad, you're going to fill us in about the Greenwood Lake Community Garden. There are 2 slides, 2 pictures each.
Okay, we're really moving along now with the garden. And again, the challenging part was building, kind of doing construction as we were planting. So that was, and creating the beds, so I was trying to do like 10 things at once. Things are really coming along. You see we have a row of beans on the first slide. I didn't trellis them as well as I should have, just because we didn't have a fence. I kind of thought we were gonna have the fence first, so they were gonna trellis up the fence, but we built the beds first because the fence took us months to get. So I didn't realize it would take so long. So they're growing nicely. They'll probably be, fully in the next, week or two, and then we'll probably be done with them. And we have a nice row of lettuce coming in very nicely. And that, I guess Bill just motivated me to start another thing of lettuce, because I guess these are gonna probably bolt pretty soon. But like my brain is kind of calmed down a little bit. I guess I should put 20 more lettuce, get ready to go for the next round.
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks, yeah. I guess I got to be more diligent. And all right, if you could show the next slide. And I do have a question. We have really nice onions growing, and I've never grown onions before. So I'm gonna actually, as I'm showing you this stuff, I was just wanting advice, like, A, how do you know when onions are done? And then is there any procedure afterwards? Do you have to cure them for a few weeks? So if anyone could answer that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, they usually just fall over on their own when they're done. And then they brown, the leaves brown. And so you can let them like that for a while. But at some point you want to pull them up, and you want to just put them in a shady spot and let them sit there for a month. Yeah, I usually put them in my carport because it keeps the sun off of them. You don't want to put them in the sun. You don't want them to get wet. So the carport for me is a good spot, and I can just spread them out in a tray that it's off the ground a little bit, has little legs, and they sit there in the tray and they air. Basically, you just want them to air and to season themselves. And then after that, then I bring them downstairs to my cold room for storage.
All right.
Usually in late September.
Okay, so we got to wait a little while. All right.
How
Thank
long
you,
do you
yeah.
keep them for in your cold storage? How long do they typically last, Bill?
I'm still eating them from last year.
Oh my
Wow.
goodness.
Nice.
How do you store them in a particular way, like in newspaper shavings, just
No,
sitting out?
it's just a plastic tray with holes in it, so they're aerated, and it just sits in the cold room. The cold room doesn't have any way to keep itself cold other than it's attached to the soil. It's a basement, and so it keeps cool by itself. And that's the last thing that I have is the onions.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, Chad, we have one more picture that we can talk about. This one here.
Oh, and then so once we finish the fence, we're really starting on the inside is the members area. Now we're really starting to plant a lot of nice perennials, and we had some really wonderful donations from Midsummer Farm and I think Black Creek Farm. I can't remember the name. So we're putting in raspberries, elderberry, gooseberries for Michael. Bunch of other really nice. I'm not that great with flowers, but I know they're putting some nice flowers, and we have mulberry. How do you say aronia berry? I'm not. I always say that wrong. So yeah, we really want to make sure the surrounding area has a really nice. Again, I'm very much into edible, pollinating stuff as well. So I'm really hoping, we have to do a lot more, getting rid of the grass and there's some there's raspberries growing already at the side. I found June berries. So, I even think there's a grape vine growing there. So, it's great. We want to keep the stuff growing naturally. But, we're hoping to really attract people to come to the garden on the outside area as well. So that's very exciting.
Outside. Chad, this is outside that we're looking at?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Right. This is outside that fenced area. Like I guess I should have taken we have the fenced in area, then there's a walkway. Then on the left we kind of made a row, and then we have the back area that's open. Now we're hoping to put a picnic table, and we encourage other people to come in and just walk around the garden and have lunch, and just really admire the beauty, and hopefully pick a berry or two. So
Chad,
yes.
how are you doing with the neighbors now?
Well, we made friends with the neighbor next door, who was one of the main guys, but we would definitely get every Saturday someone's calling they say we're parking in the street. Yeah, it's definitely, we're not there. They definitely don't want us there, which is definitely not great because we're a community garden. So we want the community to embrace us. But we're moving, we're being very respectful, and hoping to win them over. When we get some tomatoes, I'll drop some tomatoes on everyone's front door on our block, and hopefully they don't wind up smashing into our fence. But, I'm going to do the best I can and be as friendly as I can be, and I'm hoping they turn around and embrace us. That's my update. Yeah, so basically the onions. And next year I'd like to get as coordinated as Bill is. Just this year, just building as I'm planting is a lot too, because then we have to put the bottom part of the fence, and then we have to make another raised bed. So that's been a bit challenging to think about. Just having the crew brought in. She's here. Oh, Sylvia's not here tonight, but Sylvia's brother Emilio is coming. He's a carpenter, and he's been so helpful. It's beyond belief. Like, it's amazing when someone knows what they're doing. Like, he put these doors up. It would have taken us 5 weeks to figure out. He just measures it, cuts it. He's been a great help.
But Chad, I mean, you started with absolutely nothing but some grass and weeds. I mean, you've done an amazing job in a short amount of time.
Thank you. It's a lot to keep going, but it's coming together, and I'm very happy about it. Thank you guys, and you all been helpful in one way or another.
Did the other people in the neighborhood have other plans for that space if it was just weeds?
Well, to be honest with you, it's an open lot that was it was actually a pretty nice open lot.
Oh,
But it has a high water table, and to be honest with you, most everyone in the block has a dog. So they used to like to take their dogs walking there and shit on the lot, and then they loved having that. So
sure.
Now
basically, I'm just an annoyance. I'm like, oh, now I can't take my
it
dog.
was the dog park.
Because I was
Yes.
thinking everyone likes a garden. Why are they resisting? But that makes sense.
And the mayor was kind of fed up because she's like, yeah, we have to mow it every week, and then we spent 2 hours hosing off the dog shit off our lawnmower.
Right.
So they had it pretty convenient that they that you're able to have this beautifully mowed open lot. And then when we had a nice meeting with the mayor, and he said, in all honesty, he says, how do you know I'm not this, I could have sold this, and this could have been a garage, or so so a few people were like, oh yeah, I guess I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
But 1 or 2 people being stubborn, like they keep calling, the lawyer comes in, he's like, they're calling that your car's a double parked. Like, and we're not double parking. Actually, one of the other neighbors was double parking and in front of our garden.
It wasn't you, yeah.
No, it wasn't us. And I actually had to talk the cop out of giving them a ticket. I was like, don't give them a ticket because they're gonna think we called. So
once they start getting the fresh vegetables, I think maybe they'll come around.
And also, I mean, the mayor's a big proponent. Like the whole village is on our side. So I'm going to be very friendly. But if they're going to keep on like trying to do knick-knack calls, it's not going to work out in their favor. Because then the police are going to come down and say, okay, you want to, you have a violation here, you have a violation there. So I'm being very friendly, but.
Are you actually, is anyone actually even parking in front of their, like, is what they're complaining about even like a legit thing, or they're just griping to gripe?
Yeah, no, they just, last week was getting, it's being, all right, okay, that's enough, thank you very much. Yeah, I don't want to get too into it, but yes, we're moving along and being very positive. Thank you.
All right, well, this brings us to about halfway through tonight's presentation. This is the time when Michael has us all stand up and move around and wiggle, do the shimmy, either in our seats or standing, whatever you feel like doing. So maybe we'll just take 1 minute and stretch ourselves out. give it another few seconds or so, just so I can see most people back in their seats.
Was it hot today or what?
You
Oof.
know, are people still getting strawberries and peas, or are those done for most people? Ours are done.
Strawberries are still coming.
Still
Oh,
have
good.
peas. Still have
And
peas.
cherries.
That's good. Yeah, the heat usually gets rid of them earlier.
Our strawberries are finishing up, but we've got a lot of, our peas are still producing.
We had a big pea harvest on Sunday. Sunday's one of our days. And up until now, many times it's a pick what you want type of deal with each person. You know, they're not supposed to go crazy. But this Sunday, I knew how hot it was going to get, and there were a lot of peas. So everybody got up there to this big trellises, and they were just loaded. And we had one of those maybe 24 by 12 inch bins, about half full. It was amazing. They're delicious. We had delicious harvest. There will be some more come on, but with this heat, it's gonna knock them out.
Sarah, what kind of peas?
Sugar snap.
Sugar snaps. Yeah.
It's my
Yeah,
favorite.
It's funny because the sugar snap. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying mine's also mass producing, so showing no signs of stopping. But go ahead, Leslie. Thank you.
I was gonna say the sugar snaps that I planted early didn't make it, but those that I planted later after it was at least 45 and 50, those are coming up now. So I don't know why the early planted ones, I know the package said it needed 45 to 50 degrees, but then other people had experience with planting them while it was still colder. But
It's a soil temperature of 40.
yeah, yeah.
How early did you plant them?
I guess it was in March because I wasn't going to plant them, and then we were talking here and everyone said, oh, you can plant them now. So I put some in March, I guess it was. And those look kind of spindly. And then I put the others in mid-April.
Okay.
Yeah, the end of April, and those are doing okay.
We put ours, I think, in about, I have the record somewhere, but about the third week of March, because I remember it was a little cold for a while.
Mhm.
And that's the main crop. And they're doing really, spectacular. And then I put in another batch in another area a few weeks after that. And last year, the peas were horrible, so who knows?
Yeah.
But we're on
peas-
a sunny slope also.
Are peas something that you can get a second, like a fall harvest out of? Like, can I put them in for a fall harvest or no?
You can. I've had ones just sort of pop up on their own. I never get that really organized because by the time you need to start them, the spots are all taken. So by the time there's open places, it's really too late to
When would
do
you do it? August or July?
I think August, because it's what, about 60 days to get peas? So just look on the packet for how many days to harvest and, count backwards. But I would say in August.
Thank you.
And some of these things don't germinate well and it's hot out. That's the other problem.
Yeah.
You have to keep them. That's what we run into. It gets hot. People's enthusiasm starts to wane. They go on vacation. Like so far, we had like 15 people come out this Sunday. And usually by this time, the numbers are dwindling. So when your labor force starts to dwindle, the amount you get done begins to dwindle.
Right.
And I imagine with the peas, you'd have to shade it to keep it cool or start them, no?
They're not shaded. These things are 6 feet tall.
Wow. No, I mean the new ones that you're planting, if you're planting for fall.
Oh, a lot of times you need to, put something, moist cover over, like beets.
Mm.
I'm always trying to get fall beets to grow, and then we end up having a heat wave in the fall, and they just, don't want to germinate. So.
Okay, makes sense.
I've never had luck with fall peas. I always put them in, but it's never timed right. Sometimes I almost had them with blossoms, but then we had an early frost and that took them out because the blossoms were damaged. And most of the time they just don't develop fully. So it's, if you do it, it's a big risk, but it's worth it.
A big risk is a few peas. Last autumn, we put in, I think it was like even in October, I put in some Canadian field peas, which are supposed to be like a cover crop.
Right.
And they actually, came up again. They were like green in the spring and they kept growing. I didn't really get peas out of them, but we could eat some of the leaves. They were good.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, pea leaves you can eat, pea tenders, my wife calls them.
Pea shoots, yeah.
Yeah. But if you eat too many of them, then you don't get many peas, so you can't, you have to be careful of that. And of course it was like a cover crop and nice nitrogen for the soil. So even if you started and you don't time it right, but the worst you've done is help out your soil and maybe you can get some of the leaves.
Yeah, and just one more question about peas, because me and peas are not always friends, but Bill, would you start them indoors and transplant them, or are they some of those plants that don't like transplanting?
I have luck just putting them in a flower, not a pot, but a long trellis of a flower. What's the right name for it? But anyway, just a tub, and I plant them close, like every 2 inches in there. And I find that works really well. I get almost 100% germination from the peas, and you have to transplant them before they get too big, because if you damage the roots when you transplant them, they're not going to do well. So you've got to transplant them when they're maybe 2 or 3 inches high, not bigger than that. Otherwise, I find that if they're bigger than that, they just get set back because the roots are damaged.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I plop them right in the soil.
Nerve-wracking, a full harvest of peas. Check back in the next episode. Okay, we're going to move on.
Peas. Yeah, it's okay. Peas, you got this.
Well, one thing I wanted to mention was that people have garlic, and I noticed that my garlic is starting to brown a little bit. And so once half the plant browns, or 2/3 of the plant browns, they're supposed to be ready to harvest. So I think over the next 2 or 3 weeks, probably your garlic will be ready once they browns enough.
And you also put them, you let them cure also for a few weeks, right? In dry, dark shaded area.
Yeah, put them in a dry area, let them get a lot of air. I know some people that just hang them in a barn and let them sit there for quite a long time, for months actually, and then put them in a cool spot.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Bill, for answering the questions I didn't know I had.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're going to go to the next slide. I actually think this is a question or a picture from Alyssa. Oh, but it says Elena. Is it Alyssa? Is it Elena?
I'll tell about that when she emailed it to me. This is Lenny Valentino. She does a lot in Vegetarians and Friends, and also a repair cafe. And she lives in an apartment, and she likes to grow things. So she had these tomato plants that she put in this wagon, and then she needed to protect the tomato plants from critters. And so there's actually some chicken wire there that she got from me. I had it used for another project, and I think she spray painted the chicken wire, so it looks a lot better than when I gave it to her. And she basically made this cage so she could wheel out her wagon full of tomato plants and let them get sun all day and protect it from the wildlife.
That is very clever.
That is very clever.
And what happens when they get taller?
At her apartment?
Her apartment is like over a garage or something. So I think maybe that it's wheeled into the garage. I don't know the details of that. The other thing she said is, maybe I should be sharing. She's going away to visit her sister, and so her daughter and granddaughter will be taking care of the plants while she's gone. She said she hoped they survived. I think she was talking about the plants. Next year, I think I'm going to invite her to plant some tomatoes in our yard, and just come visit them occasionally. And we have extra room for a couple extra tomato plants. And
they may do well in pots because I had a fight with a set of stairs a couple of years ago. And so I'm still dealing with that. So I put things in raised beds, so I'm not always bending over. And I have tomatoes in that keyhole, but I also have them in a large planter, which I guess has about 7 inches of soil. And I was eating, well, they're the sun gold tomatoes, but I was eating them all weekend. I never can harvest them and bring them in the house. They just don't make it. But, you know, so I think in pots, she may do all right if they get, you know, enough sun, yeah.
It's certainly ingenious the way she's moving them around. I wish I could.
It's like an art piece. Yeah.
Veggie beds. Okay, so we're
There's a lot of varieties of tomatoes that are made to grow in pots. So when you look in the catalogs, they're usually described as ones that are specifically for pots, and you know, they don't grow that big. They can be staked easily, where they just flow over the side of the pot, and you don't even have to stake them at all. So if you choose the right tomato, it'll be easy to do them in pots. I'm not sure how well an indeterminate tomato is going to do in a pot, though.
So one of my
indeterminate ones never stop. Okay.
One of my girlfriends, I grow all indeterminate varieties, or I start all indeterminate varieties, and I share with her. She grows in 5-gallon pots, no problem. She just keeps staking them and giving them room. But like in the 5 gallons, you know, I mean, I think last year she capped them at like 7 feet. She had topped them because she was like, okay, this isn't, but they'll keep going. And I'm always so amazed every year when I pull that root out from the tomato plant and you look at the ball and it's not that big. You know, like when you shake it off, they really don't take as much soil and nutrients around. I mean, I guess they suck out and grab it, but like the physical piece of it, I'm always surprised. So
it seems like the plant should fall over because the root ball is not wider and deeper. Yeah.
Which brings me to a question. Okay, I have a tomato question because they're my favorite things to grow. Now I know I could probably leave them, but I try to put everything in the ground. I transplant for Memorial Day, right? Now, before that, if I see any sort of flowers starting to set, I pull them because I want concentration on root growth, not on fruit growth at like that point. At what point should I let the flowers go? Like, is there a height? Is there amount of time in like actually being in the garden? What are the thoughts on this? Or does it not matter and I should just let them set flowers once they're in the ground?
I let them set flowers. I've never pinched them.
Yeah, I never pull off a tomato because it might come early and I'll have an early tomato.
I know, and I get excited about early tomatoes too, but like at the same point, I'm like, should you be trying to set more roots and not try to set some fruit for me? I don't know. But I guess maybe it's not a thing and I should just let them flower.
No, I agree. There seems to be 2 total opposite schools of thought. Like some people are adamant that you don't touch anything. And then some people like pull all the, you know, suckers, they pull all the bottom stems out. And I've read, you know, knock on wood, I always get a pretty good tomato. I mean, not like you. I mean, I think you did pretty well last year. So whatever you did last year was obviously very successful.
I can't remember, Chad. I can't remember.
I forgot what you did. You thought about it so much, you went full circle.
I know. I'm a heavy pruner. I prune a lot of suckers. I mean, I really do like lead it to a single lead, you know, main stem, or sometimes I'll do a double depending on the tomato. And if maybe I just didn't catch the suckers in time, you know, because you don't want to take off a big piece. But like 2 weeks ago, I remember maybe 3 weeks ago, the plants were in the ground for like a week. And I saw 2 of them that were setting flowers. And I was like, oh, this is too early. And I just grabbed them and pulled them off. And then like a couple of days later, I was like, should I have done that?
And now that it's so hot this week, they love it. Yeah.
So, okay. So I guess it's just personal preference then. You could leave them or pull them.
I'm glad you said you don't remember, because one thing I made a note of, taking pictures this season, I realized I need to keep doing that because I think I'm going to remember. I jot things down. I haven't a clue by the time the next winter and spring roll around. Yeah.
True story. And I try to be diligent with notes in my gardening journal too, but that wasn't something I found any info from it.
The pictures might help.
Good idea. Thank you.
I start every season very determined to keep a gardening journal. And as I get to overwhelm stage, that's the first thing that goes out of the window. Just can't write the notes.
I have a
I'm not
feeling
even
Bill has like a 600-page Bible somewhere.
I take some notes, but I really don't take enough notes. I have
no.
a calendar this year, and I put on the calendar what I did each day in the garden and what happened. But it's in really tiny print, and it's only a couple items. So
I take pictures. I take pictures and I post them on Facebook, including the foibles. Like everything I do wrong, I put on Facebook. So next year I can look back and say, that's where I messed up, or Colorado beetles were a real problem last year, or whatever.
But you only get it on that year anniversary, Shannon. That's like a problem when it's the day before and you're like, what'd I do?
No, I have an album for gardening.
Oh, there you go.
That's really clever, actually. Yeah, maybe we'll ask some more folks what they do, to record their mistakes and their successes in the garden. It seems like a combination of notes and photographs would do it. Okay, we're going to head on to the Q&A section. I'm going to share my screen again. We have quite a few questions. There's some questions about mulberries, milkweed, and mugwort. Oh, the 3 M's. All right. And the first up is a question from Michael. Michael, you want to lead this one? Michael, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Now I'm unmuted. So we've got a couple nice mulberry trees, and let's see. What I've heard is there are 3 colors of mulberries. One is like almost whitish, then there's like a dark purple, and then there's sort of like a black one. But it doesn't matter what kind. It could be tasty or it could be tasteless. These two trees actually happen to be quite tasty mulberries. We're really pleased with them. They're both inside our deer fence. So we're wondering about, is there a good way to top these off so that they don't get too high, so that they stay, so basically they're producing where we can get the mulberries from? And is there timing on that? Does anyone have any hints for us on those questions?
I would guess that after you pick the mulberries, that you can trim them and allow the growth to occur and produce mulberries for next year. That's a typical thing that you would do for fruit trees or for any bushes, flowering bushes and stuff like that. Is after they bloomed or produced, then you trim them back, and they'll produce some more growth, but it won't. You'll keep them to a reasonable size that way.
Okay.
Yeah, I think mulberries are very hardy. I think you could really go to town, and I know most people traditionally prune them a lot. Like I moved in and I have a very tall 25-30 foot mulberry tree, which is blanketed my backyard with thousands of mulberries. So I wish someone would have pruned it before I got here.
Are they tasty?
Yes, so they happen to be delicious, but I mean I got lucky. But I believe you could really, I would say at the January something, I've read, you could prune them pretty severely, and they will come back very, very strong. Very hardy mulberries.
One of the things we did this year for the first time, and I heard it from the neighbor next door, is, in the past we'd gone and pick them with these buckets, you just put a couple big tarps on the ground and shake the tree. And then you get like a tie-dyed tarp in addition to a ton of mulberries. Oh, it's good.
So I was walking all over Greenwood Lake handing people mulberries everywhere. They all shared.
You're the Oprah of mulberries, Chad. You get some mulberries, and you get some mulberries.
Yes, I was forcing them. I'm like, take some.
Okay, so Michael had one more question.
So I guess I can't believe we're discussing M&Ms at the gardening club, but anyway, the milkweed question. So this is a view of my backyard, and one of the questions that we were asked for the week was, how do we deal with, our time management as far as the garden. And one of the things I've done is there's a part of the yard that I have just given up tending. So this back section of the yard, my aim is to like mow all the way around the perimeter, about 6 lawnmowers wide. But I haven't even done that this year. But back there, at one point, I was able to get a few milkweeds started. And I thought that they kept themselves going by their seeds, that they would, reseed themselves. But then I've recently learned they're actually perennial. I've done certain things to try to get the milkweed back there to really flourish. I'd really like a lot of them. But then, some things I've tried they just haven't worked. And so like, for example, I had a long log that had been lying on the place all summer. And so I sort of picked that up and I thought, oh, well, under here, there's nothing growing here. And I can sort of plant a bunch of them here and I'm going to have a whole row of milkweed. It'll be really cool. Nothing came up.
They take a year. They take time to
That
come
was a
up.
couple years ago. I know you mentioned that Shannon visited me once, very encouraging visit. And actually, I noticed a couple places where, like on the second year, they come up back by the road, sort of a second patch of them. But I've 2 or 3 years I've tried things there, and it just seems like, well, I'm not sure what worked and how I got those first ones started.
Michael, did you planted seeds then?
Yeah, I must have, yeah. And
what time of year did you plant them?
Now, come on, do you think I have notes about these things? We were just discussing this. It's in tiny, tiny print on a calendar that I can't find.
The milkweed that comes up all over the place is a gift from the birds. And milkweed you plant, it has to go through a cold stratification period. So it's actually, one time we got 3 plants that came into the community garden. I was so excited, wanted butterflies. And so we let it go. We let it go to seed. Now I can't get rid of this stuff. It's like a horror show. It sends runners. They pop up everywhere. They're very deep. But if
they
you want to
send runners?
Runners.
Milkweed send runners?
Yeah, the root system is amazing. Like we just pull up the tops and they keep coming up. But if you want to get it going from seed, do you know how to do winter sowing in the milk jugs? There's certain things that if you take a milk jug and you cut it in half and put a potting mix down into the bottom of it and put your seeds in there in January, February. You leave the cap off and you've sliced it in half and then you duct tape it and you put it outside in a area that gets, kind of protected, but it still gets snow and moisture. It's amazing, but there's certain seeds that will come up in the spring. They act just like they're out in the natural soil. And you can also, clear an area and put your seeds out there in the fall and they'll probably come up.
You're reminding me of elementary school. You're reminding me of elementary school. That's what we used to do with the milk carton and then stick them outside the window.
Yeah. But if you're going to go to all that work, I would start the pretty orange ones, not the swamp milkweed.
Okay. I've done stuff like saved a whole thing of seed in the freezer over the winter.
Yeah.
I heard that was one of the things you could do.
Right, that's one of the things.
And of course, if you leave them outside all winter, that should do it.
That should do it.
Right. It wasn't obvious that it worked, but like Shannon said, you got to give it a minute. So maybe I just haven't seen it yet. But so, for example, here's a question.
Go to seed and just leave them, and you're not mowing, you'll end up with more milkweed.
I guess one of my questions was, if like in the autumn, if I mowed around them, would that help more seeds set?
I would think so.
Okay.
They're hard to transplant because of the taproot.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
I have 2 volunteers in my greenhouse amongst my lettuces. Michael, I don't know what I did to deserve
There
those.
you go, see?
But which
That you gotta see, yeah.
Because I ended up with those, they look gray. I guess it's supposed to be white, but they look kind of grayish, and they're just popping up around the mailbox, and I keep pulling them out, but I can't get the pretty ones, you know?
Right.
They smell wonderful though. They do. They smell like
They do.
absolute heaven. So
No, I
sweet.
like them. They started appearing in all the garden beds. They're still appearing in all the garden beds. It's like
And you
this
said the
desire to
bird.
have butterflies and, you know, raise monarchs turned into a nightmare of milkweed popping up all over.
Right. Okay, Michael, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And we're getting close to what was, the stated end of the show, but
Yeah,
but
we are getting
I'm
there.
happy to move along. Thank you, everyone.
All right, so I'm gonna share my screen again, and this is my question, and it was sort of answered by Bill, and I think Sarah talked about, pulling the weeds out by hand. Our property is overrun by mugwort.
Mm-hmm.
It looks so nice though.
Doesn't it? Doesn't it?
Yeah, it's
really
beautiful.
evil.
It's
truly
evil.
Even if you just break the tiniest piece off, that piece of rhizome will perpetuate itself, and it sends runners underneath for what seems like miles under, weed cloth to come out between the cracks. It will seed itself rarely, but it still does that on the opposite side of the garden in a veggie bed. I have a really hard time corralling the mugwort, and I don't want to resort to an herbicide. I don't want to break my fingers in just pulling and yanking and potentially creating more harm than good, because if the pieces break off when you leave it, it can, as I said, proliferate that way. One of the pieces of advice I was given recently was very radical. It was cover everything in thick black plastic, cover that with rocks and leave it for 2 years.
Yes, that is the way.
Excessive, and I was hoping somebody had some suggestions, because it's truly the bane of our existence in this property.
Did people tell you
Black
to buy
plastic
it?
is the way.
Say that again.
The black plastic is the way.
Yeah, black plastic.
2 years.
Not 2 years, but my place in Hewitt was overrun with mugwort, exactly where I wanted to put my garden. The landlord had someone come in with a thresher and they mowed. And I was using a lot of pots. So I had a lot of Miracle Grow and like dirt bags. So I used the bags, I laid the bags out flat, and I laid the bags over the land, and I put my pots on top of it, and the mugwort didn't come back where the bags were. So you can get rid of it using a plastic cover. I used soil bags.
Okay, but now it gets a little bit more tricky here, because the mugwort from where that stand is in that picture have infiltrated into other areas in amongst my perennial plants and grasses. And yeah, I just really am at my wit's end. Anyone?
Yank by hand in the areas you want it gone individually, yank by hand.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking thousands of mugwort seedlings.
One thing, here's a little, my wife will dry it and brew it and use it for a foot soak. And also, a little known fact, the Chinese word for acupuncture, it's 2 characters. The first one means needle. The second one means moxibustion. And that's when they take mugwort and they dry it and they make it like to a cigar shape and they burn it.
It has a lot of fragrance. Some people smoke it, but there's a limit to what you can do with it.
Mugwort is one of the original, it's one of the original medicines. One of the original medicines is Artemisia. So if you can find uses for it, but.
Okay.
Yeah, you could. You could be a millionaire right now. You could be selling to acupuncturists and start your whole
I would
mugwort
say
business.
just get a whole bunch of herbalists to come and take all your mugwort away.
I have been desperately looking for it. I know 3 people off the top of my head that would love to have some.
Oh, wow.
I brought some with me.
I can gladly take some. I just don't need all that much, like thousands and thousands, but I could definitely take and do as much as I can.
I am going to put my email in the chat box for those of you who are interested. Come and help yourselves to as much.
And why don't you in your perennial beds just cut those back and put plastic over those sections?
Yeah, I was thinking that would be the way to go.
Because then maybe your perennials will camouflage all the plastic that's on the ground if you put mulch on top of that.
Over that, but definitely not weed cloth.
Right,
though, right?
right.
The mugwort will cement it to the ground.
Not weed fabric, no.
No, I can attest to Bill's comments. It comes straight through.
Okay.
I found by mistake, because I have a gravel driveway and the weeds grow in it, and then every few years I have somebody come and they spray it and they put down more gravel. So anyway, there was a lot of it, and a bag of the salt it got hard and it got over there and I couldn't move it any longer. So that bag of salt, I started breaking it up and just dumping it on the driveway. Well, it killed weeds. And I know there's the salt and vinegar thing, but I've started taking the salt for the sidewalk and I throw it all over the gravel driveway, and it actually kills weeds down. So it's possible. Mow some down really good and dump some salt over it. See what happens. You have nothing to lose.
Except my other perennials.
No, I mean the big nightmare area.
Oh, the big nightmare area. Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I was having all sorts of fantasies about taking my handheld steamer and going in there and zapping each plant with the steamer, because I know hot water and steam will get it too. But
That sounds like torture, though.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
have to take it out of your perennials.
yeah, but pulling by hand is even worse.
That's
Anyway,
true.
folks, I want to be mindful of the time, so I want to move on. I'm going to share my screen again. I have to ask if there's any other questions that we haven't addressed from anybody at this point.
I have a question about rats.
Okay.
So I've heard rumors ever since I got into composting. I've heard rumors about you got to be careful what you compost because you'll end up with rats, or you got to be careful about dealing with scraps because you'll end up with rats. And I'm just curious if any of you have ever had rats ever,
No.
or know of any deterrents. I mean, by rats, do they mean chipmunks or squirrels, or do they mean actual rats? And what methods do you use to deter rodents?
I've got but I have a composter bin, so it's heavy duty plastic. And I've never had even the chipmunks, the squirrels, the skunks sometimes, come in there. I've had fox come in. No one bothers the composter.
Yeah, mine is open and I've had all kinds of critters in there. I've never noticed a rat. I guess the general advice is to not compost any cooked food, no
Right.
cheese,
Right.
no meat, no fats, to keep it really green and layer, of course, your greens and browns, to keep it soaked and wet, and frequently turn it. If you do all of these things, you're going to increase your decomposition rate and you're going to make it less attractive for scavengers.
So as long as you're composting correctly and following the normal composting guidelines, you don't ever have to worry about rats getting into your garden. Because it's like, why would you get rats or rodents in your grass and
Right.
dirt and clippings and all that stuff? So thank you. I just wanted confirmation.
I would if you're putting kitchen scraps, like fruit and vegetables not cooked, groundhogs may come. I had that problem. I naively decided to compost behind a shed, and I was putting things that aren't bad for compost. I was dumping them back there, and I've yet to get rid of the groundhog.
Big rat.
I have groundhogs living underneath my shed. and I can't get rid of them no matter
Yeah,
what I do.
That's it. They moved
But
it.
they
in the
don't
shed.
go to the composter, maybe because they have their whole home under the shed, but they haven't gone over. I mean, they've eaten tomatoes, they always get my Brussels sprouts, but
Brussels sprouts are like their favorite thing. They like
Yeah.
go for those Brussels sprouts. I've definitely had issues with like, sorry about that. Go ahead.
As I say, once they move in under a shed,
someone told me to put mothballs under there.
I've tried it all.
Boxes of mothballs. The next day they were all out, like they kicked them out, or I was like, forget it, they live here.
Yeah, there's only one way. There's two ways to get rid of a groundhog, and none of you are gonna like it, so I won't tell you.
Yeah, I won't
Someone
either.
came one day who told me he knew someone who had a humane way to get rid of them, and he came with this medieval looking trap. And I just started crying. And then he's like, "Oh, are you from the city?" He was so disgusted. It was this horrible looking thing. And he said, "Oh, but it breaks their back." And it was
It's just terrible. But like you guys have had normal raiders into your garden, like chipmunks are normal raiders, occasional squirrel, the groundhog, stuff like that. That's just, you just got to have fencing and regular deterrence, right?
Right.
Thank you so much.
I've noticed we've got like blueberries on bushes this year. It sort of seems like birds aren't taking them. And we have so many mulberries, and I don't see so many birds like snapping up our mulberries. They're delicious. I'm wondering, are people noticing like declining bird population, or are the birds doing something different this year?
Less finches at my house.
Yeah, I have lots of birds. Blue jays, robins, finches.
Same number as always?
Yeah, and they're eating the strawberries, they're eating the blueberries, they're eating the cherries, but yeah.
But they're beautiful.
Maybe they just left your area.
They found better eats somewhere else, Michael. They're leaving your stuff alone this year.
I have one other question. We're way over time, but anyways, we're so way over time. Let's just keep going. Some people say that when there's lots of snow on the ground, it leaves extra minerals in the soil, and then the following year will be a very fertile year. Are we finding that to be true this year? We had a really nice snowpack last year, better than a lot of previous years. Are people feeling that in their gardens this year?
I didn't know why things were growing so lush this year, but maybe that's it. I thought maybe because everyone was home, there wasn't as much traffic and smog and things. I didn't know why, but everything is really flourishing. Trees that are sometimes, were, showing off.
The temperatures have been pretty good this year, right? I mean, we weren't.
The thing with the snowpack is the snowpack melts slowly, so you get moisture deeper into the soil, and we had good rain this spring. So it was a very lush spring.
Yeah.
And we also managed to not have, sometimes we get that late mid-April 3 days of killer heat that takes out all of my spring flowers. The spring flowers were gorgeous. Yeah. So this isn't any scientific thing, I know, but I think it's the moisture level in the ground was better this year.
Well, we didn't have the frost this year either.
Well, that kills the fruit and all that.
Yeah, but we didn't have that.
Because remember, when you don't have a snowpack, that's when the reservoirs start to get low. And, we'll probably have a drought this summer. It seems like a time for a drought this summer.
Okay, folks, mindful of the time, I'm going to continue if there isn't any more questions. The our unusual announcements is when our next Zoom garden plot is going to be. It's 2 days from now, which is July 12th, again at 8 p.m. to give us a few extra hours of daylight in the garden. Michael wanted to just say some words about the community solar.
I noticed that somebody put in the chat that they wanted catnip to do some sort of fundraising for the Humane Society. One way you could contribute to the Humane Society is sign up for Community Solar and ask them, get them to be your, to get them to get the donation for it. Or of course, Chad's Grow Local Greenwood Lake, they could also be the benefactor if you want to sign up. I recently learned that only 2% of Orange and Rockland customers have signed up for community solar. So it could be you don't know anybody who's done it. It would be surprising if you did, because so few people have. If it really is, it's easy to sign up, and you save money, and and you could help out one of the local groups.
Okay. The next item on our announcement list is that the Florida Public Library has a tool library. And I think this was also, Michael, something that you alerted me to. They would like someone from our gardening group to represent us.
Right. Do you want to stop sharing the screen?
Yeah.
And another thing, on Thursday, I just want to remind, Marie was here at our last session. They're having a presentation on like gardening for hummingbirds in the garden. I forget the exact name, but that's Thursday, and you have to sign up in advance on the library website.
And you get to take home a free native tree, I believe, right?
Oh.
A native plant. They didn't say native tree.
Plant. Oh.
Native plant, yeah.
Oh, that was lovely. You mentioned that in the last Zoom gardening plot, right?
Yes, yeah.
I should have carried that
Where
forward.
is that? Oh, it was on your main board. Okay.
Yeah, but it's on the Florida Public Library, so you can sign up on their website. Let's see, but so they have a lending library where they lend out tools. It's only for people in Florida, but still, they want, and Warwick's Repair Cafe will be having people, our Sustainable Warwick's Repair Cafe. We're going to be talking to them about how to make their program just a little bit more successful. So if anybody, wants to help represent us in those discussions about how to make their tool library, and it includes apparently some sort of gardening tools, let us know, and we'll get you into that meeting.
Okay, thank you. The last item is that the Greenwood Lake Library has an All About Seeds adult program. Chad, do you want to fill us in about that?
Yeah, so let me see, hold on. What day that is?
I have it up on the screen.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, the 8th, this woman, Jane Barber, she's a wonderful teacher. So she'll be doing a course about seeds, which is very important. And hopefully we'll be working with her and trying to start a seed library in the Greenwood Lake Library. Because I know you guys have that in Warwick with the Albert Wisner. You have a seed library. And so we're just, announcing that coming up. Hopefully you guys could join it.
Is that only in person, or is that a
Yes.
Zoom?
That's in person. Old school.
I wonder if for one of the Zoom garden plots in the future, if we could get, like, your person who's doing the seed library and the person from the Albert Wisner seed library to stop on there and do a little presentation for us.
Well, I know. The girl set up the one in Albert. She had been on one of these calls, Lauren Stemler, Graf Stemler, but I love Jane, but she's definitely not Zoom friendly.
Okay.
I can't get her to appear on any of my calls and meetings, so I would love to have it, but I don't think that's happening.
One other thing I want to mention in that is, about this time last year, maybe a little bit later, we had a really nice presentation by somebody on wineberries and different berries that are around. And I have an eye out for wineberries now. And I actually added a little bit extra nitrogen to mine this year. Anyway, if you have a chance, go back through our archives. They're on the Sustainable Warwick website, and find that. Maybe we could find a link for it.
Yeah, Lynn Schroeder, I think she did a nice
really
berry
nice job
presentation. Yeah, yes, my wineberries are coming out right now. They look quite wonderful.
Well, let me ask you this. If that presentation, Chad, is only in person, what about if somebody's there? What if we record it, or ask her if we can record it and then put it on, one of our websites or something, so we can access it if we can't make it? That would be cool.
I mean, right. She's running, this is through the library, so it's kind of really their
thing.
Well, I could mention it.
We're sharing the knowledge, right? And I will just go back. I did put it in there before. The Skidger is my new favorite garden.
Go on clarinet, please.
What was that?
And someone must have muted. Would you say the Skidger?
The
Tell
Skidger.
us about that.
Check it out. It's amazing. So the guy that invented it, he actually had taken a ring from the top of a mason jar and pointed one side and the back was round, right? So if you can imagine that, right? One side's pointed and the back is round. And he had used it by hand. Well, he put just a pole on it, and it makes removing weeds so easily. You can use it either way, like if you need to get under it with the pointy side or pull back on it with the rounded side. It makes weeding a joy, I swear. And when would anybody ever say, oh, weeding, what a joy? It is so good. It
See,
is
Michelle, you could be dancing through your mugwort. Your mugwort, you'd be skimming along with the mugwort. You wouldn't even
like
notice.
the Grim Reaper of the mugwort with the Skidger, just like having a grand old time. Watch out, mugwort.
No, I'm going to make a note here.
Yeah, maybe send a picture, Nicole. Maybe we'll show it next time.
Yeah.
It's in the link.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
in
there you
the
go.
link, and I think they sell it at like Ace Hardware. They've been selling them at Walmart. Like you can find them around, or you could just order it online. But this is not a paid advertisement, but they have my full endorsement.
So is it totally worth the $40?
100%. If you weed and you're tired of being like on your hands and knees or pulling, like even, like how, okay, I hate to admit this, but in my vegetable garden, I do pull out dandelions. And you know how much dandelions suck to try to get all the way around that taproot, right? No problem for the Skidger. Right under there, pulls it right out. Beautiful.
Wow. Okay, I'm
You
sorry.
ever buy dandelion greens?
I'm checking if any of your relatives are part of the Skidger.
I think they should be paying you for this. I think
Exactly, I'm saying.
definitely,
The endorsement.
definitely.
Beautifully done. Beautifully done.
Try it. If you like, you guys can come over and try mine and weed my garden for free.
Now I sense her motivation in bringing all this up.
No, legitimately, I do a super deep mulch as well. Not as like lasagna-like as Bill does. I just do a lot of straw. I start out with like 12 inches in the beginning of the season, and then it just goes down, down, down. But there are some persistent weeds that grow through it. And for those, especially like in prepping the bed for my summer garden, I had to get in there and really take some stuff out. Like a lot of the climbing vines and stuff. I don't even know what their real name is, but it pulled out stuff so easy. Even like renegade root vegetables that you don't realize that are in there that maybe reseeded themselves. I was with the Skidger. I was chopping turnips in half that I didn't even know were in there underneath the ground.
Wow.
You know what I want to ask both you and Bill? Where do you get straw without wheat, without seeds?
I wish I knew. I get mine from in Warwick at Wadeson's, and sometimes it has a lot of seed in it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's pretty clean, and you never know.
I thought straw was supposed to be clean, but hay was supposed to be seedy.
Yeah, but it's not true.
No, I've gotten
That's a
straw
lie.
with lots of seeds in it.
I buy there's a compressed bale of it that I used to get at Tractor Supply, and they have it over at Wadeson's now. It's a little pricey. It's, I don't know, Wadeson's about $19. But
I
it is
have it.
straw, and it's compressed, so there's quite a bit in there. And the other nice part is because it's compressed, you can lift it and you can put it into your car without having tarps everywhere. 'Cause it's wrapped in the dreaded plastic, but
Right.
Everything she is saying is accurate, except it does still have seed in it.
Yeah.
not bad.
I got some pretty good straw bales last year at Wagon Wheel Farm.
Oh, they're right down the road from me. I should try them out.
Do you know what? I find that if you can get like the first cut or the second cut of the season, when it hasn't been growing for that long, or it's not necessarily that high, or it hasn't had time to go to seed, those are the least seediest that I find. And I look on Facebook Marketplace, and last year I got somebody to deliver me like 25 bales. and they didn't charge me much for a delivery charge at all. The guy came with his hay truck, parked in my driveway, and just started chucking the hay behind the carriage house. It's perfect.
All right, I'm going to make a note of that because the seeds have been driving me nuts.
You're gonna make a note of it. You're never gonna find it. No.
I've been having less issue this year since I started using dried grass. Like I use dried grass clippings, and that has definitely, like, because I was loving the straw, but always battling, new seeds.
Right.
But I'll tell you, the dried grass is really helping me out, and I don't have any issue with it sprouting into grass.
So Shannon, just from your lawn clippings?
Yes, I don't treat my lawn. So as long as you don't treat your lawn with anything, you should be able to just collect your grass clippings, dry them out, and use the dried grass clippings.
How do you dry them out without them clumping?
You don't mow when it's wet, mow only when it's dry. And I just leave it on the lawn. You can like rake it out and spread it out a little bit, but I literally just leave it on the lawn and it dries out on the lawn, and then I collect it.
So you're not bagging it and like putting it in a compost pile and turning it. You're just letting it shoot out.
Exactly. I could do all those things, but I've just found it easier just to let it shoot out onto the grass. And if it gets clumpy, rake it out a little bit. If you mow when it's dry, you run into less of an issue with that. And then I let the sun do it.
I guess I use mine as like a mulching mower, so I don't have the chute open. It just drops it right where it is, but there's nothing there to rake up.
Yeah, I don't know. Yours is too good. Yours is too efficient. My lawnmower is an old piece of crap.
Those, because I have a mulching attachment, but you can also get bins, and so the grass then just goes into the bin. To put on the back of your mower. Sorry, Shannon, I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, you didn't. You're totally great. I have a bag. I take the bag off, and then it doesn't go into the bag. It just falls where it is. And we rake out the clumps, and that's basically it. But yeah, and it's a rickety old push mower.
Those are the best.
Are the best.
Actually, I've got a battery powered mower, and I like it. It's quiet, and the maintenance is really low. You not have to keep them. And like with a gas mower, you can't. One of the things that you can't tip a gas mower over because the oil and the gas is going to run out. But electric mower, you can flip it upside down and clean under the carriage really well.
That's awesome. I got an electric weed whacker, and I'm really loving it.
So I've also got an electric weed whacker, and the batteries are interchangeable. So I can take I can charge. I can use either battery in either one. So then you can keep them charged and keep going.
So the weed whacker, it's the same thing. If you just whack your weeds and where they fall, let them dry out, scoop them up.
Mm.
As long as they don't have seed.
Right. I don't have that much of a problem with seed in my hay for the garden or straw or whatever. Are other people really having an issue with this? Like you're growing grass because of it in abundance?
It's vines. I've had vines coming up.
Vines I do have, but I didn't think that was from I guess maybe.
I totally had hay sprouting. I was growing hay.
Yeah. Interesting. Not if you had a Skidger.
We have run really late, and
we have almost a half an hour over. I guess everybody was having, so many questions. It's that time of year when there's so many questions coming up and, so many interesting things happening in our gardens. It's quite understandable. But we are going to meet back here in about 2 weeks on the 12th of July, 8:00. Please, everybody, send pictures of your gardens, send in your questions. We want to hear about, all the things that are perplexing to you, maybe just what you think is happening only to you in your garden, that maybe some other folks have suggestions or ideas about. And again, feel free to drop me a line and come and help yourself to armfuls of mugwort.
I've already emailed you.
Oh, super. I saw that. Thank you, Shannon.
Michelle, put it up on Facebook Marketplace. Let people know that you have free mugwort for them.
Yes.
Come pick it up.
Thank you.
Or start selling it, and they'll pay you for it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so hard to believe, but I'm going to definitely try that. Thank you. So if nobody else has any questions, I'm going to bid you all good night. Thank you for participating. It's been wild.
Good night, everyone. Great
Right.
stage.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Happy gardening.
Happy gardening. Thanks, everyone.
See you. Thank you, Bill. Good night, all.